Hello, my name is Lori Boyer. We're here in the Rare Book Room at Concordia University in River Forest to talk with Dr. Carlos Messerli, who is lecturer, essayist, musicologist, church musician, educator, and the founding and executive director of Lutheran Music Program. Hello, Carlos. I'd like to start off just asking about your early trajectory in music. How did you first become interested in music and musicology?
Well, I don't know if you want to go back this far or not, but I was raised in a musical family. My father was a Lutheran pastor, musician, and violinist. And my mother was a music teacher, and everybody in our home did something in music and practiced a lot. And there was always this word of excellence, that you try to do it the best you can. Mm-hmm. So when I was 5, I had a chance to be interviewed used as an example at a master class from a teacher from Juilliard, who came out to Portland, Oregon. I was raised in Oregon City, and there seemed to be some promise in music. And so then from then on, I was given lessons outside our home. And my father and mother both kept their musical lives going along with their other activities. So we were just expected to do something in music. And after elementary parochial school, the congregation had established a Lutheran, congregation Lutheran high school. It's a little bit like homeschooling, only on a little larger basis. Mm-hmm. And again, there was some opportunity for music. I had won some contests, and so they thought I might make something of myself as a classical musician. I don't think they expected me to be a concert pianist, but yet the training was in that line. Mm-hmm. I went to school then after graduating from the Lutheran school and the public school, went to Concordia River Forest, now university, and took piano at DePaul from a man named Tarnowski and another teacher in the Loop called Leo Podolsky, and had a opportunity to take a year out from college to teach in Austin, Concordia, Austin, Texas. And while there, I studied piano with a man from Germany named Walter Gelewicz. So I mention that because that's all training towards classical music and being a classical pianist. When I came to River Forest, I discovered organ, and there were a lot of things going on in choral music that were intriguing to me. And gradually my interest shifted to choral music. I belonged to Albert Beck's choir here and did a bit with the choir and had a good exposure to choral music. My first call after teaching after Concordia was to Nazareth on the south side of Chicago, where I taught 3rd and 4th grade, and then 5th and 6th grade, conducted a music program, and just incidentally was sports athletic director.
Wow.
At the elementary school. So
I had no idea. That's great.
So I had a variety of duties. Everybody just was expected to do those things.
Sure.
After 4 years at Nazareth, I was called to be a music director at Luther High School South. Mm-hmm. And tried to do very ambitious things like we had done in college at Luther South. Found students responded, and I was just overjoyed that they would be pleased with my choral work. So again, another reinforcement for choral music and church music, and I had opportunity to serve then in a parish as a church musician. Mm-hmm. After 5 years at Luther High School South, I was called to Concordia, what is now Concordia University, Nebraska. And there I taught piano, but again my love for choral music came out, and they gave me a choir that was really the chamber choir of the senior choir director. Mm-hmm. And I saw the need, because of my experience at Concordia, for a chapel choir. And so that choir became the college's chapel choir, somewhat reluctantly, because the college had never had that kind of organization before. I found out that I couldn't attract students then without some kind of reputation in this area, and what I chose to attract students was a national tour. And so every year for the years I was at Concordia Seward, we went to various parts of the United States, and always doing liturgical programs. My specialty was inventing a program that could be done by a college choir, a chamber choir, with strong Lutheran emphasis, Lutheran historical emphasis during Holy Week. And presenting a congregation with a visiting choir during Holy Week was a challenge. But we were well received. The congregations did not always understand what we were doing, but we stuck to the parts of the liturgy, and whatever day it was in the liturgical Holy Week, we had a program prepared for that. One congregation went so far that whereas the normal liturgical celebration that they had was Holy Communion on Maundy, Thursday, when the sacrament was instituted, they said, in view of your visit, we're just not going to do that this year, and we'll listen to a concert that you have. So we sang in that concert all about Holy Communion, but we never did it. Oh. And that's not a complaint. That's just the way some congregations were. Right. But back at Concordia, I kept tried to keep the importance of liturgical year and invented vespers and matins for the holidays as they came across the year. We had one year, Richard Wienhorst had composed a matins for Ascension Day, and that turned into something the college had never seen before, because it was quite an explosion of music, everything from Schütz to Bach, and it was again a mark of something that the college hadn't done before, but they were kind enough to give me a chance to do that. Wow. The most memorable experience at Concordia was doing a weekly Holy Communion service that the college eventually turned over to Concordia singers, as the choir was termed. And in that service, 6 o'clock communion across the street at the campus church, St. John's, we could perform anything. And so, in the Lutheran heritage. And so we did everything from Hassler Mass to liturgical motets to anthems by English composers, all fitting into the theme of the day. And that in itself was reinforced by a program that I had taken up in school. While I was at Luther South in high school, I had to have or wanted to have a master's degree, so I took one in piano performance. And that's what I was prepared to do, and that's why Concordia engaged me, I'm sure. But then I went to University of Michigan and got what I guess one would call a really solid education in musicology with Hans David and Louise Keiler, and a very distinguished faculty and very demanding. So that opened up the possibilities of searching the library for still more music from Lutheran heritage and finding out how close the Anglican heritage and the Roman Catholic heritage was in terms of supplying repertoire. So all of that came together then, finally, as I left Concordia after 20 years, and a very fine experience and very grateful for the opportunities, and had a chance to continue my education at the University of Iowa, mostly under Daniel Moe, and got a degree, doctorate in choral literature. Again, expanding the possibilities of exposure of music of 16th, 17th, 18th century to Lutheran situations. And in 1980, I resigned from Concordia because of some restrictions that the college had placed on repertoire. So I returned again. Well, I actually kept going in the practice of church music, because through all of these years, I was successful in keeping some congregational worship support viable with a choir. And so for a couple of years, I was very pleased to be a totally church musician in Lincoln, Nebraska, where we had lived. After 2 years of that, I received a call from a group at Valparaiso University who had a thought of building a Lutheran Interlaken. And they went to Aid Association for Lutherans, which provided thought it was a good idea and would fund it, but not as a Valparaiso program, but as a national program. So then they engaged me in a feasibility study, which I took a year to conduct, and which, as you would expect, had a predictable outcome of success in establishing a program. And they provided funds for it. And stipulations were that it be pan-Lutheran, appealing to all stripes of Lutherans, that it focus on Lutheran worship. But in order to attract students and to plumb the possibilities of potential church musicians, we had to offer a program like Interlaken, and that meant band, orchestra, chorus, private instruction from teachers all over the country, attracting students from all over the country. And that proved to be not just acceptable, but accepted with enthusiasm by a governing board of directors, a student body, and faculty. And I think the Lord was in favor of the program to the extent that it succeeded and produced in the very first year with orchestra director from the University of Arkansas, a choral director from the name of Dale Warland of the Dale Warland Singers, Fred Fennell, the prominent symphonic wind band director at Eastman, as our first ensemble leaders. We also established some principles which the program has perpetuated even to this day. Now they're, I think, in their 33rd year, and that is emphasis on chamber music. So everybody in the student body at summer, what we called then a summer camp, participated in some kind of a quartet. As the years passed, we expanded that from instrumental quartets to even include vocal quartets. Every student was responsible for getting along with, encouraging, and performing in small groups which are suitable for their own congregational experience. The music was for instance, the orchestra was provided music which was standard orchestral literature, not always specifically Lutheran. In the first year, the orchestra played Mendelssohn's Reformation Symphony, but that actually was, from a strictly instrumental standpoint, unique, because we normally would play Beethoven or Tchaikovsky here. But the emphasis in individual music study focused on development of the best that a student could become, that you were exposed to a wide variety of musical influences, and you could take that home to your congregation. If you were fortunate and could find 3 other musicians at your home congregation, then you'd have a model from the camp that you could use to help guide you through performance in worship. It was a little difficult at first trying to satisfy the needs of all the Lutheran church bodies, because this came at a time when the Lutheran Church itself was in somewhat of a turmoil about should they be more conservative, should they be more liberal, and we had to work very diligently at trying to strike a balance which served everyone. Our emphasis was on music, and music in the Christian tradition, music that presented the gospel, that could speak to all parts of Christianity, but especially to Lutheran principles and with Lutheran doctrine. And once the program was established, those issues did not become quite so divisive, and it was quite eye-opening. This whole venture opened my eyes as to what kids were interested in or would respond to. When the program was established, the first thing I thought was we'd have to have a supply of guitars so that everybody could sing or play in they didn't call them praise bands then, but pop music in church. And I was just delighted to discover that the classical music and solid training for excellence in performance spilled over into the student's life and really took the place of any need to express oneself with the latest guitar fad or fashion. So the fact that the program still exists in this form, and that it still has features which are enduring for performance in church. It pleases me very much. Let me give you one more example, just a small one, but we had concerto performances by students. A student would audition for this at the program, and then one student was chosen. But we deliberately worded it so that that student was the representative of all the other students, not the best, although he or she may have been. We did not use the word competition. I don't think it ever appeared in print in anything that we did, because this was to be an encouraging camp. We didn't follow Interlocken's principle of seat placement in sections. For instance, the person playing fourth violin could be replaced by the person playing fifth if their audition that week was that much superior. We chose seating in orchestral section on different principles that had very little to do with specific winning of a competition.
Right.
So that one person feels good and another person may not. So I know it's a long story, but
Great story.
as I thought about this, it does make some sense that you're first exposed to serious music study at home, going to a school that encourages that, continuing that, getting that training reinforced by professional training at schools that are excellent, and then being able to apply that at the high school level and eventually at Lutheran summer music each year at this summer camp.
And you mentioned growing up that one of the themes for you was excellence. And that was certainly something that, for myself as a student at LSM, I heard often from you and from the faculty and everyone, that the goal was to be as excellent in music making to the glory of God as you possibly could. Do you feel like the experiences from your first high school teaching position helped you understand what great things high school students could be able to do musically?
Yes, it was it was a surprise to me and somewhat satisfying that whatever goal the church musician or the teacher set, the students may not always be able to reach it, but they will certainly reach higher than if you didn't have that loftier or the goal of a greater degree of perfection.
Right.
So we did things which were beyond the level of the students. We sang Jesu meine Freude in high school. It did the entire motet, and I don't think I ever should have done that, but the students had an experience that they wouldn't have had otherwise. Absolutely. And enjoyed it, seemed to enjoy it immensely.
Sure. So do you find in the research you did in preparing for the LSM curriculum and preparing what the whole experience would look like, do you find that that research coupled with your own experience helped you set really high standards for these kids?
Yes.
When they came?
Yes, indeed. And in the process, I learned so much, not just about what students what challenges they will accept, but things that students can do because I had spent time in the music library. I am somewhat saddened by the fact that Lutheran church musicians and choir directors, even college choir directors, do not utilize a musical library, especially now that it's almost everything is available digitally. So they don't realize that a hustler mass or a Palestrina anthem, Lutheran on the one hand, Catholic on the other, can contribute to Lutheran worship if it's within the range of ability of the students. Students will become interested in it, even though they never heard of it. And even if the choir director has never conducted it before, because the music is of such high quality. So those somewhat isolated experiences that I had before came together with a group of anywhere from 150 to 200 and some students each summer in Lutheran summer music. There's one more thing I want to mention, Laurie, and that is the Lincoln Lutheran Choir. That's a group of students that applied this principle to a different setting. And just because of my enthusiasm for joint church work and for choirs, I organized a pan-Lutheran choir in the city of Lincoln, Nebraska. We got a very good turnout and recognized in the second year that Luther had an anniversary, and so we capitalized on that, and we presented the program in Lutheran churches and even in the Roman Catholic Cathedral. Some of us had never worshipped in or been in a Roman Catholic cathedral for that kind of experience before. And so we kept that choir going all of the time that I was in Lincoln. That was another block of 20 years. And the choir is still in existence, performing that kind of pan-Lutheran service and giving church choir singers a chance to do some things that they may not have available in their local church libraries. So in 20 years we presented 2 programs a year, each one on a specific liturgical theme. Just a while ago I was looking at the program that we devised for baptism, and it was not just the program itself was totally immersed, as one is in baptism, with all of the features, all of the advantages, as much of the history and doctrine that we could support scripturally in Lutheran music. And that also then we learned had to include Anglican music and some contemporary Roman Catholic music. It was not truly parochial, but it was truly Christian. And in the process, all of us, myself included, learned more about baptism.
That's really beautiful. That's an amazing experience for all the singers involved, not only in that, but then also in your later work with LSM, that you brought that kind of more ecumenical background that was aware of and open to the possibilities outside of strictly Lutheran composers or strictly Lutheran tradition, but that embraced that as well. It's wonderful. That ties in, I think, to your work with the Inter-Lutheran Commission on Worship toward the creation of the Lutheran Book of Worship, and your work on the manual for that. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and how coming together with different people from different backgrounds contributed to that?
While I was at Concordia Seward, I had the opportunity to become a member of some other organizations. And one was the Association of Lutheran Church Musicians, and I was a second president, not truly knowing exactly what I was doing, but I was in a position to help people who were unfamiliar with some of the possibilities of being one who explores Lutheran music, and that was nationwide. But perhaps even more significant was the fact that I was given the opportunity to serve on the Inter-Lutheran Commission on Worship, where I was dealing with people from the major Lutheran church bodies, leading eventually towards the creation of a new hymnal. And if you look at the Lutheran Book of Worship, on the title page, it lists the constituent creators, supporters of that hymnal. And it's not that hymnal was superior in so many regards to other hymnals, but it is the hymnal alone. It alone is the hymnal which was created by a pan-Lutheran group. Well, a background for that also came because at the same time then, or perhaps it was a couple of years earlier, I had been given the chance to join the music editorial commission of the publishing house, Concordia Publishing House. And so that gave me another avenue to talk to people about what is Lutheran in music, what is scriptural, what is worthy in music. And that's not to say that Concordia did not produce some music which became popular and was a little different style, but there was in the background of our work as a committee the thought that we should always remember that the musical traditions of the Lutheran Church include some of the finest music of the 16th, 17th, 18th century, which is not only possible for performance today, but would be absolutely ear-opening and very gratifying. Because of the variety of publications, we tried not to become one-sided, but there was always this possibility there, which, if we hadn't encouraged it, church musicians would not even know about. So that specifically, that work specifically in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod then spilled over into the ecumenical efforts of the Inter-Lutheran Commission on Worship and the creation of the Lutheran Book of Worship.
Wow. And you mentioned to me recently that some of the things that were on the table, so to speak, for the Lutheran Book of Worship were kind of remarkable. I think you mentioned Stravinsky at one point. Is that correct? Can you just tell us a little bit about the things that were up for discussion?
When you're on a committee like that, and you're given free rein to speak whatever you wish to say, especially since there are other bodies being represented and you don't know where they will come from. Mm-hmm. So I remember at one meeting we were looking for people who could be commissioned to provide settings for the Lutheran Holy Communion, the Eucharist, as a part of the new book. And I remember one of those names was Igor Stravinsky. Wow. Well, I frankly admit I had not been in a meeting of church musicians where that was even considered. Mm-hmm. And ultimately other composers of high quality were chosen. But the process in Inter-Lutheran Commission on Worship was to give a wide variety of people an opportunity to contribute. One of the results of that kind of free-ranging exploration was the decision that Richard Hillert was chosen as the editor of the book. And while Richard did not have complete control, he set some standards for quality and for form, which governed what was actually on the page. And it was surprising that some of the things were new to us, no matter which part of the committee we came from, and others were very familiar, and because we had worshiped joyfully and successfully with them. One of the contributions of the people from the of Norwegian background was an acceptance or presentation of hymns that were of a congregational style that others, let's just for example in the Missouri Synod, were not accustomed to. Some of the people in the Missouri Synod were able to present chorales that people in the other church bodies had never heard of, and even people in the Missouri Synod. So there are hymns in that book which had not been part of any Lutheran hymnal before, and the subsequent publications did not always include them. These were that tried and not found to be satisfactory to some people.
Wow. That would be a really fascinating experience to get all of those people together and see the things that each different group brought to the table. You mentioned a standard of quality that really demanded, again, excellence in what was being printed, what would be finally used. Which then connects me, again, back to your work with Lutheran Summer Music, Lutheran Music Program, and especially the goal that you mentioned of enabling students to go from their experience at the summer camp back to their home churches and schools and essentially independently be able to apply those standards of excellence in those places. Can you talk a little bit about some of the stories you heard about students who did those things, or alumni who you were familiar with who, made a real practice of that in their own places?
When the program began, I was not aware of its implication. I was sort of trying different things, most of which proved to be adaptable for Lutheran summer music. But one of the principles that we discovered was not all people are going to be professional musicians. Not all people will even be successful choir singers, or they will not be able to take their cello or violin or saxophone into worship because their standards were, while satisfying, were not quite up to performance levels. So students sort of partly self-selected themselves out of becoming professional musicians to becoming amateurs, or just saying, I enjoyed it. And when you hit kids at 13, 14, 15 years of age, the things that you say have to be tempered so carefully, because while they may not want to be seen in public with you or their parents, they do listen to what you say. And if a person decides they want to do something else and you encourage that while keeping their music alive, you've made an enormous contribution to their life. And so Lutheran Summer Music provided an opportunity for those who should be church musicians or professional musicians, or perhaps not serious musicians at all.
What would you say to those who are currently working with young, teenage or college age musicians, in terms of what you've learned from your work with that age group? What would you say to those directors or church musicians or leaders about encouraging students that age to participate in church music and to be involved?
Whatever you say to them, and in whatever way you encourage them, that will have spillover effect later on in life. Perhaps immediately, but later on in life. And the profound effect of the combination of worship and faith and excellence and quality of literature all will come to bear possibly at some later point. They'll find out they were not suited to be professional musicians, but their children will. So presently, I just returned from a visit to Lutheran Summer Music 2014, and 3 parents came up to me thanking me profusely for what I had done long ago. Well, it wasn't that I had done it, but it's what they provided. We helped to provide a setting for when they were at an impressionable age. And the music and faith and the teachers and other students they brought them all together and changed the course of that student's life. This one mother gave me a big hug at the end of camp, and it surprised me a little bit, but she said she loves the same things that I do. And she enjoyed the experience just as I did. And of course, I was not thinking so far ahead 30 years ago. That was, I just wanted to survive.
That's an amazing thing, and an amazing expression of really what is the culmination, I think, of your life's work. What you've always striven for, and what has clearly been communicated to your students. I know, to me personally, in my own experiences at Lutheran Summer Music, but also to thousands and thousands of others who've been blessed by your ministry and by your constant commitment to excellence and to revealing the word and the gospel message through the music that you've helped us
Well, I've enjoyed having the chance to talk about it.
Likewise, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk with you, Dr. Messerli. It's been a pleasure.
Welcome.